Commercial underwriting is a tough job. It's a high-stakes business, it's competitive, it's very complex, and it's also very expensive. The stakes are high because the premium amounts for these policies can range from several $1,000s a year to maybe upwards of $1 million a year for these commercial areas. It's expensive because it's very manual these days. There's a lot of touch, a lot of people involved, a lot of paper involved. It's not yet automated. It's complex because the lines of business and the risks and exposures that are involved are very different. It's very different covering a offshore oil rig, which is very different than a professional sports team versus a roofing business, or covering all the Taco Bells in the state of California. Very totally different businesses. So what the product tries to do to solve that need is to make it fast. So we have underwriting automation. We have tools to get data from different systems and pull them together for the underwriters. We're trying for efficiencies, so we try to capture knowledge that underwriters have from experience and embed that in the system so that junior underwriters can come up to speed and be able to be almost as good as a senior underwriter. We have to be accurate, so the rating and the data that's involved and the underwriter's subjective experience and knowledge of these businesses has to be tied together so they can get a good price and not underprice or overprice the policies. And because it's competitive, the underwriting team works very closely with agents. That's where most of the business comes in. The agents do shop it around for different carriers, so it's important that the turnaround time be fast. It's also important that the quotes are accurate. Agents often deal with the first best quote that comes in, so it's important that those quotes be good. And the ease of doing business is a really key part of the commercial underwriting experience. So the underwriting management tool tries to make that process as fast, as seamless, and friendly as possible.
Well, underwriting management was from the beginning created for underwriters as a central workbench or central workstation where they would go and they would manage the overall workflow from submission intake all the way through binding and issuance. The key benefits of the underwriting management is that first there's the app reader capability that reads in a quote PDF and transform that into real data that can be then fed to the submission intake process and so on. This is a very important selling point and one of the unique features of the platform. The second thing is that really allow for collaborative underwriting and a lot of interactions with the agents and the team that does the underwriting for the carrier. Third, also, the underwriting workflow from beginning to end, submission intake to issuance, is also one of the strength of because it allows the underwriter to see and manage the workflow very efficiently. is a central workspace for underwriters, and they can see all the information gathered together for submissions.
When you start to do work in underwriting management, you're starting from what we call a submission, which is unfortunately the same name used in Policy Center, but the submission in underwriting management really represents what was submitted to the carrier from the agent. And it can be a request for multiple lines of business, multiple coverages, multiple policies. And in fact, one of the things I was just pointing out to somebody here today is that a submission isn't even necessarily a request for any particular coverages. It's really a way of describing the needs of the insured. And so underwriting management really fills in the white space between kind of what comes in initially from an agent and what ultimately goes out the door in terms of a quote proposal that might span multiple quotes, multiple policies, and really helps the underwriting team get through that process, determine whether or not there's a match for what the carrier is interested in underwriting, and really determine whether they should offer a quote for that business, and in particular what products should they offer to meet the needs of that insured.
So here we are in Bedford, Massachusetts, which is where I'm based. About half the services team is here in Bedford, as well as almost all of the engineering team for the product. The other half of the team is remote, spread across all over the country, some people international. On a project, for the services team, there's a few different roles. There's always a project manager, a business analyst, and a technical architect of some sort, and then often there might be some additional business analysts, there might be developers, usually developers, and those different roles all have a little bit different meaning in the world than they do in the traditional core implementation world. So the technical architect is responsible for the integrations, the technical delivery of the product, and again, it's a SaaS implementation, so it's working closely with the SaaS operations team to get that transition with living in the cloud. The business analyst is a little different because they're doing both an understanding of the business process. So in the commercial insurance world, that business process is often very complex. They're also configuring the tool. And they're not really coders per se. There's some technical JavaScript type expressions, but the BAs really have to understand the workflow. They build the rules in the BA Studio tool. They build the screens. So they're not technical functional coders. They're really layout and workflow and usability. They kind of take those roles, and also really understanding the business drivers of what's the customer is trying to get to, because as I mentioned, it's often a very manual, very workflow process intensive implementation.
As a principal architect, I wear a bunch of hats. Sometimes I'm a developer, sometimes I'm managing the offshore team, helping answer questions, helping them with implementations, taking their requirement questions to the customer. Sometimes I work with the customer to help them with integration problems or do estimations for them, help manage the release schedules, work with the business analyst to figure out how to manage configuration of the product. What else? So many things.
During the course of the project, we do several sprints, and we're an agile organization. The end result of those sprints is we have a configuration. The product has a lot of configuration with it, and that's what our business analysts do, and a lot of code. We get those together, we go through our regular development, QA, integration test cycle, and then we do a transition to the SaaS operations team. All of our installations are managed software as a service, or SaaS implementations. They're managed actually by our SaaS operations team, some of whom are behind me. Wave everybody, yeah. So they're the ones who actually make things happen. They keep it running in production, they troubleshoot, they identify defects and issues, and they pass it down to the services team if necessary. They're the first line of defense, and usually the second line of defense too.
I joined 10 years ago. On the first day, we signed our first customer, ICW, for workers' comp, and they basically, being our first customers, paved the way for and made it what it is today. We were diving into a space that actually no one had tried before, and this was a customer that was ready to take a chance on us.
So a lot of the elements of their vision really aligned with the vision that First Best had, and so it's been a great partnership with them for 10 years, or more than 10 years, and I think they're still sort of the number one customer that I would turn to ask questions when we talk about potential product enhancements, and really they've been super helpful to us over this entire time period. A great example of sort of how a strong relationship between a company and an alignment of vision between a startup company and a carrier can lead to great things.
So shortly after First Best became part of Guidewire, CompSource, who is a mono carrier in Oklahoma for workers' comp, they approached us and they wanted to see and hear what our integration strategy would be or was for integrating with Policy Center. So very early on, customer demand kind of enticed us to find a solution.
The PC integration work that we're doing, and I shared the plans with the team, that really generated a lot of buzz, and everybody can see how these two products are going to come together and really be very synergistic in solving a larger problem that our customers still have in commercial lines. And so here we are working cooperatively, building out the productized UMPC integration. At the same time, we're working with the services team to solve the problem for CompSource, and it's just delivering amazing results.